the way. Good morning. This is it. This is the last live stream slash video of the semester. So if you're live with me now, thanks for being here. If you're watching later, thanks to all of you for your hard work this semester. We don't have a whole lot to do today. We have no new content, so I'm just going to relatively quickly review for the final exam. So yeah, let's do that. And good morning, Kaliran. Nice to see you. Okay, so let me go to our class. So I'll show you the module and then we'll look at the exam real quick. So this week, that is it. Final exam only, no lab, no discussion, just the final exam. If you go to the module, you will see not much here. So we have the exam review that I am about to do right now, and then I'll post the video from that. The exam itself, pardon me, so 250 points. Did it open this morning? If it didn't open this morning, let's go make sure it's open. Yeah, it's open. Okay, so it's already there for you to access. So final exam, I'll go back and reset. So the exam is available as of right now, and it is due before midnight on Sunday. And that is all you do this week, and that is the end of your semester. So, oh, let me go back one and just point that out. So and you'll see this here again in a second, but the final exam covers the material from weeks 10 through 16 inclusive. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. You will see questions drawn from all of those labs on your final exam. So your final exam, you can only click the submit button once, but there is no timer on it. So you can go start and then leave the exam unsubmitted this entire week as long as you get it submitted before Sunday at midnight, Sunday, December 18th. And that's it. What does the reminders say? Why did I put reminders? Oh, the exam, and then that's it. So hopefully that's welcome news. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of use my agenda here. I didn't really have... so what I did is I went through all of your questions from your labs from week 10 through week 16 and got the major topic areas out. So what I found in there and what you should expect to see on the final is possibly some questions that asked you to compare the major distributions of Linux. So I saw there were questions about Debian, Fedora, OpenSUSE, Arch. In there were some questions asking you to compare Linux versus the BSD systems. Linux and BSD, just as a parting thought, are not the same thing. Linux is a built from scratch open source operating system. Linux was built to mimic all of the major functionality of Unix systems, but it is not Unix. BSD, on the other hand, is a Unix, and all of the BSD distributions are built upon in the same family tree as the original Unix operating system, which was created and owned by AT&T. The Mac operating system, by the way, uses a BSD system underneath. So the reason why those questions are there is because if you know your way as an operator around Linux, which you do, then you know your way around all of the BSD systems as well, because they are all very, 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 very similar. Okay. We also did a little sort of just brief introduction to the concept of a package manager. You had several questions about the APT package manager specifically. That's the Debian package manager. And because it's the Debian package manager, you also find APT in all of the Debian-derived distributions. So, for example, Ubuntu is a Debian-derived distribution, and I think maybe Kali is as well. Okay, so anyway, do review the concept of a package manager, and I mean, everything from the labs is fair game, but APT, there is some heavy coverage of the APT Debian package manager. All right, so then we also talked about the bash dot files. And you'll notice I put the little tilde slash in front of all of them, which is to remind you that those dot files are things that must be found in your home directory to function properly. So do review those dot files and what they're used for and how you work with them. We, in that same kind of section, we talked about the env utility, which is a way to dump all of your environment variables, your environment settings that the shell is tracking. We reviewed also the use of alias and unalias to create little command shortcuts. We talked about using the bash shell history, which is very, very powerful and useful. So that's the thing. If you're ever going to be around Linux more, you want to know your way around the history, the command history in the bash shell and how you use it. And then we had a module that covered mostly permissions. So we talked about the difference between permissions read, write, and execute on a file versus the read, write, and execute permissions on a directory. They are subtly different. We talked about how Linux manages permissions, which is by groupings of user, group, and other. So when you do a long listing on the command line, you see, well, typically you might see 10 or more little dashes. But anyway, remember that the RWX, little groupings of 3, the owner user, the owner group, and then everybody else, other or world, is how we group and work with those permission sets. And then we also, of course, used the change mode, chmod command, with the letters method and the numbers method to change permissions on files and directories. Also, one of the, it's kind of a very important thing for people who are going to do regular work on a Linux system. Let me move that down to part 2. Okay, so part 2 of the review. So we then did a couple of weeks worth of, pardon me, scripting in the bash shell. So we talked about the purpose of the shebang line. We talked about making shell scripts executable, which is the only way to execute the commands inside of them. We looked at some of the basic building blocks of a shell script, including echo statements, which is print stuff to the screen. Read statements, which is how you collect keyboard input into your script. Creating script variables, so you can store and change information inside of your shell scripts. So that one kid is asking in chat, is the final timed? No. You can start the final whenever you want, and the only timer on it is that when you need to have submitted it before Sunday at midnight. So there is no timer on it. You have the entire week, but only one submission. So just be mindful of that once you submit, you only have the one submission. But otherwise, you have until, well, really from 7 a.m. this morning until just before midnight on Sunday, as much time as you need in there. So for me, the final exam is as much, it's not to try to catch you out, but it's to try to drive home, just kind of compel us all to go back through one more time, do some review on the major concepts that we hopefully learned in the class, so that when we walk away from the class, we're as solid as we can make ourselves be. Yeah, all right, so good question. Where was I? Okay, so bash shell scripting, we talked about echo, read statements, variables, how to make comments with the hash symbol, which is not quite the same thing as the shebang, but they can look alike in scripts. We use the count of the number of arguments in our scripts to make them a little bit more adaptable. We looked at the automatic numbered arguments concept. That's the $1, $2 stuff. And then we looked at a whole bunch of different if statements, case statements, and select statements, which are the sort of programming, some of the basic programming tools that you have access to inside of a shell script. The big thing to remember about a shell script is that one of the reasons why it is so darned powerful to do shell scripting is because you have access to every command that you can execute interactively at the command line. You can embed those commands in shell scripts and perform quite complex tasks. So that's great about shell scripting. It is made to run commands for you. Okay, then we did, I separated out the concept of inode just because we barely scratched across it, but your final may end up getting questions, a few, about what is an inode and what does it contain. An inode is really, it's a term used to describe the information about files and directories that are stored by the computer. And the reason why that comes up there is because we can use the inode numbers. So every unique resource, file, or directory on a Linux system has a unique inode identifier, ID number on it. And we can use those inode numbers when we are experimenting with linking to see the difference between hard and symbolic links. So that's why we put inode there, is because it is very useful to use inode numbers in conjunction with linking to understand what the difference is between a hard link and a symbolic link. And there were some good questions about when are links useful to us. So in my sort of I'm an everyday Linux user, and in my everyday Linux user life, I don't use that many links. I have a couple here and there with my programming tools, but I'm not a heavy user of links. System administrators, though, you should learn about and probably will learn more about hard and symbolic links in Linux and Unix, because there will be a necessity for it at some point. Okay, then we also explored the find utility. And the reason why the find utility, I put it off until the end of the semester, is because it is a very, very powerful utility with lots and lots and lots of different useful options. So I waited to do the find utility until toward the end of the semester so that you'd be familiar with looking at man pages and interpreting the documentation that you see in a man page, and then applying what you learn from a man page in actually executing commands. So find is one of those where it can and does do lots of different very useful things. So that's a kind of at least in my opinion, you need the man pages for find to get the most out of it. Okay, and then we did regular expressions. We did just the most basic introduction to regular expressions. You guys did a good job in discussion this past week, where we sort of uncovered the fact that regular expressions is actually a very large and sophisticated technology with lots of crazy symbols, and it also is a very powerful programming and system administration tool. So we did the basics, and we used regular expressions in combination with the ls command, with the grep command, and then also with sed and awk. So that's why those things all came up in the same week, is because grep, sed, and awk are particularly good if you know how to do at least some basic regular expressions. You can get some quite good power out of them. And then to sort of close out, we did just a couple of picking up the pieces items. So we looked at a few utilities related to viewing and managing disk information. And by disk information, I mean storage. So the storage devices, the hard drives and whatnot on your system, how your files and directories are being used in terms of their capacities. And then we didn't use fdisk, but that's a tool where you can actually alter the structure on your storage devices in terms of how the operating system uses them. So we didn't do a deep dive on those things. Those are just kind of very much the basics. So you don't need to do heavy review of those. But again, those are really sort of good system administrator tools. So if you're a system administrator and you stay around Linux, you will end up using those more. And then we talked a little bit about run levels, which is what the course outline wants you to know about, is the run levels. But then I also introduced how run levels map onto the new System D style targets. So that's somewhat technical. Don't worry tons about the details, at least in my opinion. But make sure that you do review that basic knowledge you got about run levels for the final. What else do I got? I think that's it. That's all I got. So good luck on the final. I am available this week during office hours as always. Canvas inbox. We don't have a discussion, so I do not recommend Piazza, although I will try to check it. Canvas inbox, office hours, if you have any questions or issues around the final exam. Otherwise, wow, that went really quick. So I apologize if I got you up super early in the morning just to do that review, but there you have it. That's what the final will look like. So the final is available already right now. You have one submission, but there is no time limit on it. So you can start it and then you can leave it sitting there and come back to it later. Just don't forget that you only have the one submit, and it is due before midnight on Sunday. Okay, I think that's it. Best of luck to all of you. Thank you, that one kid. I appreciate that. You also have a great holidays. Anyway, best of luck, whatever you guys are up to going forward. Best of luck at that. Thanks for working with me this semester. I appreciate it. Thank you, Robo. Appreciate it. Happy holidays to you as well. Goodbye, Kyleron. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Take care. I'm still available. Canvas inbox, office hours if you need anything. So I'm not going anywhere yet. But this is it for us in terms of what I will. No lecture next week. We're done. So take care.